Hello and welcome to Turkish Football. I'm your host, Ozan Günçe, and alongside me is international football broadcaster Semra Hunter. Semra, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us among your very busy schedule of football.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
To kick it off, Semra Hunter, the name, that suggests to me that there's perhaps a Turkish background there. Do you have a Turkish background or how's that sort of come about?
I do. And crazier still, I actually do have a Turkish last name. I just never use it because people have such a hard time as it is with my first name that if I gave them the other name, that would just make their mind explode. So my Turkish last name is Pazarbaşı. So my name came about because my grandfather is Turkish. My father's mother, she was a teenager in the 50s. Her father, my great grandfather, got a job opportunity to go to Turkey for 2 years to work in Ankara. So she was there, met my grandfather, who was a local Turk. They fell in love. She got pregnant. The problem was that at the time, my grandfather couldn't leave Turkey because military service was obligatory. Then there was a coup. There was always some reason why he could never really leave the country. In any case, my grandmother came back to the States with her family. My dad was born there and raised in the US. I mean, basically, that's kind of where my Turkish roots come from. My parents wanted a name that was different and unique in the States. And my mom, because she grew up as well speaking other languages, she lived in Colombia, Mexico. She really likes Spanish. She likes the sort of male feminine distinction in Latin languages, and she wanted a name that ended in A. So they asked my grandfather for various names, and they came up with this one, and they really liked it. So that's pretty much how I got my name.
That by far is the coolest story for a full name I've ever heard. So that's incredible. Getting into your career a little bit more. Now you've worked for the likes of Al Jazeera, beIN Sports, Real Madrid TV, TFTV World, and now you've been at La Liga TV, I believe, since 2018. Something suggests to me that you are very passionate about sport, especially football. How did your love for football come about, and how did that sort of transition from playing at a young age into covering the sport?
It was pretty straightforward, actually. I think I first kicked a football when I was about 3 years old. It was pretty much love at first sight, and that was it. I was very active in sporty growing up. I'm an only child. So my parents felt that it was really important that I played in a lot of team sports to really get to know people, to make friends, to develop social skills and that kind of thing. For me, soccer was always my number one sport. I absolutely loved it. I just was addicted to playing it. And I would go down to the park almost every day, whether it was with my dad or with my friends or whatever, have a kickabout. And then as I got older, it became more of a serious thing for me. And I had a pretty serious accent when I was like 16, I think it was. And that pretty much curtailed any possibility of pursuing that path to go professional. I didn't really know what to do after that. And it wasn't until a few years later that this, let's say, gap was kind of bridged between, okay, what do I do now? And my passion for sport and for football. And it was actually my mom who suggested one time, because my parents are big sports nuts. They love all different kinds of sports. And she said to me, you know what? I think you'd make a really good sideline reporter. You know, it's sports, travel, and it's all those things you like to do. And I was like, wow, it's kind of a genius idea. I can't believe I never really thought about it before. And that really was the spark that kickstarted my career of getting into football journalism specifically and pursuing something in that vein.
Wow. Okay. So we thank your mum then, since that's how it sort of came
I thank
about.
my mom too as well for giving me the idea.
Absolutely. So you got into it, you knocked on the right doors, and you showed that you were passionate. You got the job day one. What was your feeling like? I mean, did you sort of know how you were going to tackle it, or were you in the sort of euphoria of like, what's going on? Where am I? Or what was that like for you?
I think it was more the second one, because I was living in Madrid at the time. I had been working exceptionally hard to find a way to stay in Spain, to stay in Europe, because believe it or not, for Americans, it's not easy. And I was so determined to find a way to stay. I was a bit nervous. I was a bit stressed. I was putting so much pressure on making it work that I knew I had to perform at the highest level that I possibly could, even though I had zero experience. I was just coming out of my master's. So it was this mix of, pinch me, is this really happening? Where am I? I can't believe I'm starting my career in Spain, in another language that isn't mine, in a country that isn't mine, in football. And I felt a bit proud of myself at the same time, like, cool, you know, you can do it.
Because it's not just a role that's at a desk in front of a computer. You're
Right.
talking about interviewing, the recent Ballon d'Or winner Karim Benzema, for example. I mean, were you not nervous at all when you were interviewing like a big star name for the first time?
Oh, without a doubt. If anything, I was
Yeah.
probably shaking. And my voice was probably shaking as well. It's something that takes a long while to get used to. Even now, sometimes I don't really feel super calm before I go into an interview, but I've definitely gotten a lot more used to it than in the past.
It's not something that you'd expect, I guess, for it to just click from day one, as
Right.
you've explained. There would have been a transition phase for sure. In terms of experience, more so, what would you say would be your top highlight? I
Ooh.
mean, I'm thinking of maybe the Champions League final last season, where I caught a glimpse of you, obviously covering that. What would you highlight as the number one?
Oof, that's a very good question because I've been very fortunate and I've been able to do a lot of things I never even dreamed of doing. I'll give you a story that I like to tell a lot of people just because it sets such a marker, I guess, for myself in my career. I always adored Xavi Hernandez because I was a central midfielder. And whenever I moved to Barcelona, when I moved to Spain the first time, I moved to Barcelona. So I used to joke that the day that I interview him, I can then retire because nothing will be better than that. So I was very lucky in that I got to interview him 3 times. Play football with him a couple of times, and it was fairly early on into my career. So I thought, okay, well, this is great, but I'm not going to retire now. I'm going to keep going. But it really was a big highlight. And I would say he was probably the one person I was the most nervous about whenever it came to interviewing because I wanted to make such a good impression. You're meeting your idol. You want to come off well. You want to ask the right questions. You want to make sure that you can impress him and all of these things. So that is definitely one of my top 3 at the very least experiences that I've had.
Any former or current player, I think, wouldn't have even had that experience. Very impressive. In terms of highlights, we spoke about, you also came here to Australia, I believe, in 2015 in Real Madrid's pre-season tour. Given that we're based here in Australia, I'm just curious. I mean, what were your thoughts about the visit? Did you get to do any sightseeing? Did you have a favorite spot here?
I've been twice actually to Australia. I went once
Okay.
when I was in uni in 2007 and I adored it. I absolutely adored it. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to move to Sydney after that. I had such a wonderful time. Then I was really, really excited to come back when I came back in 2015 with Real Madrid. It's a great place. It's a great part of the world. The people are wonderful. It was really nice to meet people that were such big fans of the club, of Spanish football.
Every admin on this page except me is from Melbourne, so I'm not going to do the whole
Oh, really?
Sydney's better. Sydney's better than Melbourne, isn't it? I'm not going to do that banter, but I'm satisfied with the fact that you said you enjoyed Sydney, so that's good enough for me. I'm happy. Obviously, we spoke about how you were raised, where you live. That, I guess, proves that you are bilingual. Could you say that that's proven to be an advantage in your career thus far? And are you looking to learn more languages?
Yes, to both. So, by virtue of living in Spain, it's obviously incredibly helpful to speak Spanish. And by living in Barcelona, it's also really helpful to, even if I don't use it very often, but to know Catalan. Because people really appreciate the fact that you can understand it, that you can speak it, that you make an effort to speak their language. So, I would actually say that I'm trilingual, even though I don't really use Catalan too often, but I do understand it fluently and I can speak it if need be. I did have a go at Turkish for a while when I was in my early 20s. I did get pretty decent enough. I could have like a fairly basic low intermediate conversation with people in Turkey. I was happy with that. But then once you leave, you know how it is. I mean, you lose it. It's very difficult to maintain if you don't practice it on a regular basis. So I wouldn't consider that a language that I use anymore. But I would love to learn other languages. I really would. I think French would be helpful. And also between the Spanish and the Catalan, it would be very easy to pick up. Same with Italian because of the Latin roots. And I think it is absolutely helpful to have a lot of languages that you can use at your disposal that make you, they give you more opportunities. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. No, I can understand that. Also from a female perspective, I'm just curious to know this as well, Semra. Do you see any up and coming women making a statement perhaps in sports broadcasting? I mean, we see many examples of this, not that we don't, but what's your take on that? And also the role of women in sports. I feel like it is becoming more apparent and significant. The leagues are becoming more and more professional around the world. The World Cup is getting crazy amount of views every time it's around, as well as the Euro that was not too long ago. So what's your take on both of those?
I think overall, rather than just highlighting or specifically mentioning anyone, I don't know about Australia, but at least in the US and in the UK, in the English speaking markets, let's say, you definitely see that more and more women are popping up. And I think that's brilliant. Whether it's in broadcasting, whether it's in football now, where they're getting a lot more, not just attention, but they're getting a lot more support and a lot more care. And they're really trying to develop the game. They're starting to do that here in Spain, but it's still a bit behind. But I think it's just really nice to see, because it's important that women have a place at the table. And I think it also reflects what's going on in society. And I think by virtue of really supporting women in these kinds of environments, well, hopefully that means in a society, the perception of women will also start to improve as well. I think it's a necessary thing that has to happen. It's, better late than never, whether the fact that it's taken this long, well, it's taken as long as it's needed to, I guess. But you do see women that are actually able to command a presence, that are knowledgeable, that work exceptionally hard. This is not just box ticking. I think when I first moved to Spain, it was. I won't lie to you. When I first moved to Spain 15 years ago, you would just see really attractive women that were involved but had absolutely no idea about sports. They weren't even necessarily journalists. But that has dramatically changed. You only get a job now, really, if you're actually qualified to do it. And that's how it should be. It should be that way. And so I think it's only enriching the quality of coverage, having people who are exceptionally good at what they do, and they have different perspectives they can offer and bring as well. So I think it's better for everybody, quite frankly, that we have a much more balanced, even level playing field, and that there is finally space where women can offer up their voice and opinions.
Yeah, totally agreed, and beautifully put. And I'm sure this will blossom even more, these examples that you've explained. So you have worked for Tedita World in the
Yep.
past. During that time especially, did you have a certain experience that comes to mind? Do you have a favorite team as well? Would you like to reveal that?
I don't have a favorite team. I maybe just for proximity, because I live so close to Besiktas, I would just go with Besiktas. Although my family would probably be upset. I think most of them are Fenerbahce fans. But I do remember after Besiktas won the league, I think it was in 2017, I want to say, I went to one of their games. It was one of the last games because they had won it, I think, a few weeks before the end of the season. And
Yes.
it was the game at home where they went to celebrate it. It was just pandemonium. I've never seen anything like it. It was unbelievable. It was crazy. Going a few hours ahead of the game. I'm sure you've been to the Besiktas Stadium, so you know the
Yes.
layout. It can be quite difficult
Yes.
to get to because it's right on the Bosphorus, and there's not too many avenues that come into it. I mean, all of the streets were blocked off around it hours in advance. And when I finally got there, it was completely fenced off. There were police obviously checking to make sure that people weren't bringing things in that they shouldn't be bringing. But it was like just this wall of smoke because people had been going at it with the flares for hours and you couldn't see where you were going. And so there were just people everywhere. It was just black and white because everybody was wearing the Besiktas colors. People were going nuts. They were climbing lampposts. They were singing. They were going nuts with chants as well. But then you would randomly see the little like corn kiosk and the guy selling some simit or whatever it was.
Yeah.
The energy was crazy. It was so palpable. It was so colorful and vivid, the whole experience. I mean, they really are so passionate, Turkish fans. It's nice. It's really, really nice. You don't get something like that in Spain, surprisingly, not to that degree as much as they do love football here. I mean, there it's like proper religion. And it was one of the most entertaining experiences I ever had, just at a football match, full stop.
And you just made the day of every Besiktas fan, especially here in Australia watching this. So there you go, Besiktas fans. Some bragging rights there as well. We're going to now move on to a little segment to finish off our program called Tiki Taka. I thought the name might be somewhat relevant to where you're based and what you do over there. So basically what we're going to do is I'm just going to throw some questions at you and I need some quick answers, one-word answers. It's not too hard. It's not like an exam. I think we'll get through it okay. So
we'll see.
Let's go. So you ready for some Tiki Taka then?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Champions League or El Clasico?
Oh no. I'm already stumbling at the first hurdle. El Clasico.
Okay. Day match or night match?
Oh, night.
Goal from open play or a free kick?
Ooh, open play.
Home kit or alternate kit?
Oh, it so depends, doesn't it? I'll just go with home kit.
Relegation drama or title race drama?
Ooh, title race.
Madrid or Istanbul?
Istanbul, 100,000%.
Paella or döner?
Ooh, paella.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I
Sharing the
really
love
like
there.
both. I really like both.
I see what you're doing. You're sharing the love. It's good. Guitar or clarinet?
Oh, guitar.
The last two. Here we go. So
Oh,
you've got
boy.
15 seconds to name 5 of the most trademark names you've ever interviewed, past or present. Go.
Oh God. Okay. Xavi, the original Ronaldo El Fenomeno. Gareth Bale. Oh God. Why am I drawing a blank? You put me under pressure and I can't think. My mind just went, it just blocked itself completely. Luis Figo.
Perfect. That's a very good 5. And lastly, do you have a go-to line when there's a hiccup live on TV, and what is it?
Oh, I wouldn't say that I have a go-to line. I think I just kind of improvise whatever I have to in the moment, whatever it's relevant to the context of what's happening, which does happen often because I don't use a prompter ever. So at least I'm pretty much prepared to just invent something if I need to.
There you go. And that shows how professional you are. You don't go to the whole cliche of we have a technical difficulty here or anything like that. So there you go. Just
I
the
have had
answer.
to say that a few times, but only because it was actually true. So
Yeah, you got to be honest. You got to be honest. I think I have to say that Tiki Taka was better than any of the La Liga sides, especially this season. Is there anything you'd like to say to all of our fans here in Australia?
just, I hope you enjoy Spanish football. I hope you enjoy the Champions League. I hope you enjoy Turkish football. Just football in general, right? It's a beautiful sport, and we all love it for good reason. So,
And we love what you do over there as well. And I'm sure our fans will catch you one way or another, whether it be Champions League or La Liga. Thank you once again, Semra Hunter, for joining me on this special segment on Turkish Football TV.
thank you very much for having me again. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for watching us at home as well. So you'll be able to catch this on Turkish Football, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of the platforms. I was your host, Ozan Günçe. It was a pleasure as always, and it's bye for now.